Hi, my name is Doug, and I'm going to be wanting to tell you about a video. This is a video by TED Talks, who put out lots of videos, by Jean-Paul Marie. Pardon my French, but that's the best I can do. And please forgive me, Jean. My son Andrew will also be expanding on the subject later on in this video. What Jean-Paul Marie was talking about, he's a war correspondent, and consequently had to go to all these war areas and report on what was going on while the war was going on. And in the video he describes the awful effect the constant death has on a person. And he also in the video talks about the importance of talking after the brush with death. And so it had quite an impact on me. And I was thinking about it, and he was also talking about how it leaves you with a kind of death inside of yourself, because these deaths of these people stay with you. And he spoke about how these deaths happen inside of one, and one holds on to them. And this is not a nice thing, and he spoke about talking about it. This then got me thinking about things, and as I was doing that, it didn't come to me in terms of a logical understanding, but suddenly something dropped into my spirit, which I believe is a revelation. And it occurred to me that it's very much like a computer is. A computer contains all sorts of information, but it's just a computer by itself. It doesn't relate to anybody. And then as I was thinking about that, the revelation continued, and I felt that, wait a bit, with a computer that is able to contact the internet, things totally change. It's no longer alone. There's a saying that I believe the Lord gave me a long time ago. Corporate responsibility with individual freedom of function, and individual freedom of function with corporate responsibility. The corporate responsibility would be where that computer is in contact with the World Wide Web. The individual freedom of responsibility would be where the computer itself operates its own software, and it does all the things that it needs to do to function. The revelation then further continued, where it struck me that in this analogy, and it is analogy, people, I'm not saying that in the spiritual world this is what it is. It's purely an analogy to understand what goes on in the spiritual world. And the analogy here is for Jesus, that he serves the same thing, he functions the same thing as a router does, in terms of enabling the computer to be in contact with the World Wide Web. Now, when this happens, everything totally changes. No longer is it an isolated computer, in a manner of speaking, like a living death. It's now in contact with all these computers all around the world. What a change. A massive thing. And it's almost as though a new living situation develops, and the kind of death is gone. And so when we get confined to just ourselves, this is what happens. We end up with these little deaths and bigger deaths inside of us, and no way to talk about it as Jean-Paul Marie talks about. He recommends that one must talk about it, and so that's where the analogy of the internet would come in. Now, just to further the analogy, so we have here the computer as a representative of an individual person, an analogy. We have Jesus, in terms of the analogy, being the router that connects us to the worldwide web of believers. And the thing that makes that function in the spiritual world is the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit provides the power in the spiritual world to activate what in this analogy would be the World Wide Web. And so it's an analogy that really speaks to an understanding of how things would work in the Christian world. We have the computer, us, we have Jesus as the router, and the Holy Spirit providing the power to operate the World Wide Web. In this analogy, the angels perform the same function as the servers do on the internet. And the Internet Protocol Suite performs the same function as what the Father does in the Godhead. I'm going to hand you over to my son Andrew now, who will talk further on the subject. Bless you.
One can extend the analogy further by saying in the beginning we operated all on the same operating system. Satan caused us to switch to different operating systems, which are incompatible with the Father's operating system, separating us from God. Through the laws, God gave us a dial-up modem to connect to Him. We were not able to keep the laws, so the connection was unsuccessful. Jesus, however, became our router, which provided us with a direct link to Him. Accepting Jesus is like accepting the connection of the router to ourselves, allowing the Lord to act just like previously when He would connect directly to us. But now we have a conduit through Jesus. Eventually we will have a permanent connection to the Lord. So in this, the Lord makes manifest Himself through Jesus. We can see the various relationships and the way they work correlate quite nicely with the analogy of the computer system. Very interesting that this should come about now and in this age, that we can see clearer what the Lord has planned. Obviously the Lord is the creator when even things that we create correlate with Him. It shares a common design and a common way of thinking that we didn't see or perceive before this because we did not know about it. As we learn more in the scientific world, it seems to support more and more the beliefs we hold dear in our hearts. I hope that you will continue to do research on your own and gain knowledge and understanding more and more about the things of God and the things of life. We thank you very much for listening to this video. As always, we wish you God bless from both of us.